In this video, I want to talk specifically about a very interesting community in Venice, Florida, especially if you're getting a deeper dive on Wellen Park and contrasting against Lakewood Ranch, Florida. And for those that don't know me real quick, I'm Adam Hancock. I have a real estate group here in Southwest Florida, and I post daily video content on Florida relocation and investment guidance. Please like and subscribe for access to over 100 videos in the last 12 months and counting. Today's community highlight is on Grand Palm by Neal Homes. So itinerary-wise, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm first going to start off with some background and talk about locational info. How close is this to downtown Venice? How close is this to the beaches? Why that matters? Why put that in context to Sarasota as a whole. I'm then going to talk about the amenities. So interesting here, these amenities are fully complete. A lot of ones are way newer, so you kind of have an idea of what this is. We know how mature it is. They have some intangibles related to kind of nature-centric stuff in the community as a whole. Thirdly, we're going to talk about the housing specifically, not just like in the individual community with Neal, but also this one has a lot of context in comparing to the other Neals in Lakewood Ranch and South Sarasota and Parish. We're going to kind of cover that a little bit. And fourth, we're going to talk about all the rest of the stuff, the HOA fees currently, the lot schedule releases as far as like how you can logistically even buy in here right now. We're going to talk about anything else that would be relevant as far as timeline. So let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are talking about Grand Palm by Neal Communities in the Wellen Park District, formerly the West Villages in South Venice. So the value proposition of Grand Palm, the West Villages as a whole, or rather Wellen Park as a whole, is a lot about location, but also this is the Neal Communities concept that is in the Venice version. So you have the Windwards of the world, you have Grand Parks of the world, you have Canoe Creek up in Parish, and this is the Venice version. So a lot of this individual community is really unique, really cool. Kind of park that for a moment. A lot of this is Venice, Florida's proposition. If you go that direction, that is why you're going there for the majority of the stance, since now the pricing is not all that different than a lot of Sarasota. So wanted to say that. So locationally, in our background section here, where this community sits is right here. So this is kind of on the South Venice. Wellen Park is on South Venice, Englewood fringes. So South Venice, what it basically gives you is it gives you a pretty coastal suburb. So you can see it's a little bit eastern here, but still pretty coastal for where a lot of the suburban communities are. And to kind of put that in context, when you're looking at Venice, kind of some value proposition as far as what you have access to is one Venice Island, which is downtown Venice, which is this district. And like I mentioned in the past, you can see how barrier islands run all the way down here through Siesta Key and Casey Key, etc. And then you see how the beach now merges with the mainland here. So this is Venice Beach, Brohard, Casperson Beach. And what that gives you is the downtown district feels very coastal because it's one and the same with the beach. From just a broad standpoint, you're talking the downtown main district very close to the beach because you're not separated with kind of an inlet and then gulf to one side. So the value proposition, Venice Island is a big one. So you are about 9 miles from Venice Island downtown district, where you sit here in Grand Palm. You are also pretty close to the beach, so you're about 9 miles from the beach too, which is going to be a lot closer than a lot of Lakewood Ranch distance-wise. And your beach here really is going to be Brohard, Casperson, Venice, which is going to be kind of right here. South Venice is more like travel by ferry to the beach, so you're kind of in this district, but pretty just direct shot western there. So 9 miles from the beach, 9 miles from Venice Island. That might be a 15-20 minute drive, but 9 miles nonetheless. And then, so you kind of have a closer suburb, so kind of set that there as a value proposition. And then a second one would be if you are someone that has family or leans further south, what this is going to give you a little closer proximity to stuff that goes south. So what you're going to have here is you're going to have, like I said, Englewood. It's kind of both in Englewood and South Venice, but the majority of Englewood's down here. So central Englewood's only about 20 minutes. And then you're also only about 60 miles from the Fort Myers Airport, which a lot of people like here. So if you're sitting here, you're further from the Tampa International than Fort Myers Airport. So you'd have easier access to Bonita Springs and Estero and Fort Myers in this district. So not super close, but you kind of get the idea because you kind of see you run out of land here and then you're going east down the interstate to get over here. So I wanted to mention that. So being just generally southern, if that appeals to you, Venice is a good aspect there. And then Venice as a whole, it's going to be slightly older. It's going to be a slightly more laid back pace of life. And this suburb's unique because of Wellen Park as a whole. So Wellen Park, amenity-wise, it's going to have its own downtown in Q3 2022. It's a really unique concept. I'm going to talk more about that. But that itself, it's 9-ish neighborhoods, all woven in this overall larger concept. A lot of what I talk about Lakewood Ranch on a smaller scale. And then generally, it's location on a map that really determines if you're going Grand Palm, because you're simply in Venice, right? You're going to be 30 miles from downtown Sarasota. You're going to be further from Lakewood Ranch, further from the Sarasota beaches. So if you do Venice, you're living the Venice lifestyle. And that's kind of how you should frame Grand Palm, because Grand Palm is usually looked at in a conversation versus the other Neal communities further. People aren't usually just saying, I want Wellen Park, where should I look? They're usually kind of cascading down the 75 corridor, going north to south, depending on what part of town they like more. So I'm going to talk about schools next, but I wanted to frame, that's a little background on the builder, that's background on this community. It is a little bit more mature, the amenities are fully built. So we're going to talk about schools next. Venice and South Sarasota both have really highly rated school, that's a plus. Even the high school, which I know becomes a problem with some of the western Sarasota communities. We're going to talk about that next. We're then going to talk about amenities, housing, and more. So let's move on to schools. Okay, let's talk schools real quick. I know that's really relevant for a lot of folks looking at these type of communities. So what you have here public-wise, you have Taylor Ranch Elementary. So Venice as a whole real quick, Venice and South Sarasota, and then like northeastern Lakewood Ranch are always, like, if you talk to anyone, that's kind of what's considered the suburbs, have highly rated schools, typically a good chance of getting both elementary all the way through high in a public facet of higher rated. So that's just kind of some food for thought there. Venice usually is really, really nicely rated. And in this case, this specific community, you have access to Taylor Ranch Elementary, which is a 9 out of 10. Now, a lot of elementary schools are rated really high. It's typically an easier level of school to get rated on the higher end. And then what you have beyond that, for middle school, you have Venice Middle School is the public school. So it's a 6 out of 10. So it's considered average. But a lot of the schools people would consider nice are kind of 6 plus. And then you have Venice Senior High as the high school. So that's a 6 out of 10 as well. So I wanted to show you guys that. Now, Venice Senior High kind of sits in the pretty much the heart of Venice Island, and all these schools are real close by. And then you have, like, as always, you have a myriad of other options too. One of the unique parts about Venice is you have Pineview, which I think is like the highest rated like school for the gifted in some sort of level in the United States. So that's really close by too. So I think Pineview, I should have looked it up. I can't remember, but I think it's K through 12. But it's something like that. It's definitely more than like just high school. But look up Pineview School for the Gifted. So that's an option too. And then you have private schools and you have that kind of thing as well. So I wanted to show you that. So you have, again, just to recap real quick, you have Taylor Ranch Elementary, you have Venice Middle and Venice High have access to all kids of those school levels, the Grand Palm community. So now let's talk amenities. Okay, as far as amenities in here, they have a really nice offering. So it's expansive, it's diverse, a lot of variety. So what you're looking with, I'm going to kind of spin them off while you're kind of looking at some of the tour. So you have a really nice pool. This one's real nature centric, so tons of trails. There's multiple dog parks. There's a lot of sports courts. You have basketball, you have tennis, you have bocce ball, you have volleyball courts. There's green space to play baseball or soccer, that kind of thing. And you have a splash park for the kids, which is great. And this whole thing surrounding kind of this 32-acre lake. So you can see tennis, really, really nice amenities. I think there's 3 pools actually. So they did a really good job with it. This is kind of the lookout point, so you can overlook this. So there's kayaking and that kind of thing, fishing. So again, real nature centric. That's kind of the theme of a lot of Venice. The beaches are kind of that way too, like protected looking, more nature centric. If that's kind of your speed, this could be a really good fit. So that's kind of the community as a whole. I want to hop over and talk a little bit about Wellen Park, where this sits inside, and go from there. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about Wellen Park. So a lot of the appeal here is what basically happened is like I say, like Wellen Park is formerly the West Villages. It's kind of like it was the West Villages, and then Wellen Park kind of like rebranded this West Villages district plus additional neighborhoods and this downtown concept and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of rebranded to position to kind of encapsulate more of the total vibe of the place. And so what you basically have here is you have 11,000 acre plot of land that's considered Wellen Park, and I think more than half of it's undeveloped. And what it's going to have is this downtown district. You're kind of seeing renderings of here. So this is aiming to be done in Q3 of 2022. So what I say a lot about like these, I really like these places where it's really hard to get in really walkable districts with suburban housing for any sort of affordable price. And even like those really walkable districts, a lot of that's like not really suburbia. It's more like if you had a modern new build, it would be in an existing neighborhood. So a lot of people like that suburban feel, but they don't want to be far removed. This kind of gives you like, this brings in a lot of the walkability within not your only neighborhood, but your own district, which is would be like a larger area. And then you're also not super far from town, so I think it's kind of appealing. And this one's going to be pretty interesting. So it's going to be surrounded by kind of this 80-acre activity lake, and it's going to be shops, restaurants, mixed use space. Some really nice concepts that all these 9 neighborhoods will have access to. So it looks like it's going to be really nice. It's again Q3 2022 is their aimed completion. And it's going to include Cool Today Park, which is the spring training facility for the Atlanta Braves. Multiple of the neighborhoods in Wellen Park itself have golf courses like Boca Raton. But you can kind of see here, these are the renderings. You can kind of see what they're trying to do. I think it's going to be really cool, It's going to be really great for that part of Venice, Northport, Englewood, Little Corridor. And again, I think this is marrying people that just kind of they want a little bit more house, but they want the Sarasota feel. I think these concepts are going to bring a lot of that. So that's kind of would sum up the other part outside of just Grand Palm's amenities specifically inside the neighborhood. So I hope that gives a little better impression. Obviously, there's a lot more detail that could come out with this kind of stuff, but just giving you a broad overview. And let's talk about our third section, the housing specifically for Neal homes inside Grand Palm. Okay, now let's talk about the home collection specifically inside Grand Palm for Neal. So I've gone over Neal a lot in the past in other videos, so make sure you check out those too. I'll try to drop a playlist at the end. But I wanted to say that because I'm going to talk about the homes themselves for sure. And I'm going to talk about the collections and what they're doing in here. But I also want to frame this against the other similar communities nearby, because I think that context matters more than ever. And a lot of people are shopping that holistically. There are some differences amongst them. I wanted to kind of lay that out a little bit more in this video. So I'm going to do a little bit less detail on getting real deep in the collections here. I'm going to give you enough, but I want to leave some time to compare that. So per Neal's usual kind of scheme is they have 4 collections in here. The Coral, the Celebration, the Cove, and the Coastal. The Coral is a villa, the rest are single family. And these ones are ranging from about 1,600 to about 3,000 square feet, and from the low 300s to the upper 400s, base price without lot. So that's kind of how they're running. So basically what you have is, so from the villas are about the low 300s. You have the Celebration, which is a collection of single families that you can get in as low as the mid 300s to the low 400s. And these are going to be escalating, and they're going to have 2 stories, they're going to have 3-car garages, they're going to have different positioning. A lot of these kind of look like the Taylor Morrison style to me, on these kind of Mediterranean elevations. And then in this one you have the Cove series, which is going to be upper 300s to low 400s. And then we'll look at a couple of these. And then finally, the biggest one in here, a lot of people's favorite, is the Coastal series, which in Grand Palm specifically, it's the mid 400s to the upper 400s. And this is going to have the Kiowa, this is going to have the Savannah 2, some of the absolute most popular models, and the Captiva. So this collection is usually really popular. A lot of people in that kind of like price range where maybe Waterside or the Isles doesn't make sense. But Neal's a really good fit. Really comfortably, you get a pool, a large house, really nice traditional floor plan. The Coastal series is really popular with Neal, with my typical clients. So before we go and look at a couple individual pictures here, if you haven't seen them before, I want to talk about some of the other Neal surroundings. So basically on a map, you have coming from northeast to southwest, you have Canoe Creek, which I'm going to kind of park for this conversation. But you have Canoe Creek up in Parrish, and that's a nice Neal community. Definitely the biggest cost savings for going out that far east. Not as clunky as it used to be with the Fort Hammer Bridge. It's not that far out anymore from Lakewood Ranch. You're probably 5 to 7 miles down Lakewood Ranch Boulevard now with that bridge. But Canoe Creek's going to be our cheapest bet, right? And then you have 3 communities specifically that sit, right now they're pretty even, where I wouldn't have said that maybe 6 months ago. So you have Grand Palm, which is our focus for today. That is in Venice. You have Grand Park, which is in South Sarasota. And then you have Windward, which is in Lakewood Ranch, which I've spoke about in the past. So kind of some differences here. So let's talk about Grand Park. Grand Park is going to be in the middle of the town. It's going to be in between Lakewood Ranch and in between Venice. The Grand Park is going to have, I'm going to talk about the series, then I'll tell you kind of the differences We're going to be contrasting the differences to Grand Palm for this conversation. So Grand Park is going to have the coral villas, same price, right? Low 300 start, 16 to 1800 square feet. All's even there, right? If you want to do a villa in Grand Palm or Grand Park based on a different part of town, they're going to be pretty even there. The Cruise Series is a series that's at Grand Park that is not at Grand Palm. And the Cruise Series has an entry-level single family for low 300 starting price. Now that's going to be a difference. So that Cruise Series does not exist at Grand Palm, and Grand Palm technically, according to their recent data, their lowest single family base price starts in the mid 300s, so save a little bit of money with the Cruise in South Sarasota. The Celebration Series, which is going to be the entry-level single family at Grand Palm. The Celebration Series is also at Grand Park, very similar there. So when you hop to this series, you're going to be pretty even, so all is equal, just picking a different part of town. And then you have the Cove Series, which is the series right here. So that's going to be upper 300s to low 400s. That's right below the Coastal. The Cove is, again, going to be equal. So you have the Coral, the Celebration, and the Cove, Grand Palm, and Grand Park, all is even there. And then the Coastal Series, the difference there is the Coastal Series also is at South Sarasota's Grand Park, but the Coastal Series at Grand Palm is going to start at a slightly cheaper price. So those larger homes at Grand Park are going to be more expensive, slightly, right? But they're going to be more expensive than Grand Palm. So certain series are just completely apples for apples, but jumping to the larger home, which is interesting, right? Like the lowest price point at Grand Park, but their largest homes, same models, slightly more expensive than Grand Palm. So I know it's a lot of very similar names, can be confusing, but definitely reach out if you want individual detail. But kind of the summary is Grand Palm is in Venice, down here, and Grand Park is in South Sarasota, Windward up in Lakewood Ranch, Parish has Canoe Creek. So that's some differences there, right? So two differences mainly from South Sarasota to Venice. And then Windward is another really popular community that kind of just sits on, a really good spot in Lakewood Ranch. It's closer to town. It's really close to the new Waterside community, which is going to have public town center, and really attractive prices. So typically in the past, I would 100% say to save money, you're going to Parish and you're going to Venice. So you're getting on the fringes in either direction. The current state, Grand Palm is not showing prices that, like surprisingly, being in South Venice, they're right up there, if not more expensive in some facets. So now looking at Lakewood Ranch and Venice, you're almost purely picking on area. Now, some builders are cheaper, but right now, Neal would be pretty similar. So it makes it a little easier, at least holistically. Now you can just basically pick, not based on price, but based on location. So Windward, some differences here, is Windward has the Coral collection as well, which the Coral is the villas. Now Windward, surprisingly, the villas on the Windward start at a lower price. So you can actually get in the upper 200s on the villa. So the villa buy for Neal might be best at Windward. And I know I had a gentleman priced out, this was 3 months ago, but I had a gentleman priced out with an extended back lanai and a couple other options. And he was sitting all in at like $285 with lot. So interesting there. So if you're going to do a villa, then maybe you look at Windward as a priority, where you're going to start in the low 300s at both Grand Park and Grand Palm. The Cruise Series is also the low starting entry single family price point that Grand Park had. So Venice doesn't have a low 300 base price single family, but both Grand Park and Windward have the Cruise. So the Cruise hops both in Grand Park and Windward, where it wasn't in Grand Palm. So that's another difference about Windward. And then you basically have no Cove Series at Windward, which the Cove Series was the upper 300s to low 400s, kind of mid-range single families. So there's no Cove at Windward, but there is a Cove at Grand Palm and Grand Park. And then finally, the Celebration and the Coastal, almost identical. So if you're going to go to Lakewood Ranch or go to Venice, your largest series of homes and you're also the second-ish largest series of homes, the Celebration and the Coastal being the one with the Kiowa, the Savannah, and the Captiva. Venice and Lakewood Ranch are going to be really similar. Now, if you take that large home, the best bang for your buck is definitely going to be Parish at the moment. Like if you want to do a pool, and you're like, oh, a price works really good without a pool at certain ones, Parish might be the way to get a pool. And you also have Canoe Creek has one of the lowest HOAs I've ever seen on the size homes, no CDD. So if you're willing to go that far east, also slightly closer to Tampa because of where it sits, that might be an interesting option. So I know it's a lot of information. I could chart these things out or whatever, but it's somewhat confusing either way. But kind of the takeaway at the current moment from Lakewood Ranch through South Sarasota to Venice, Neal communities are really, really comparable. So what you really want to say, what's the high school at Windward versus the South Sarasota Riverview, like Booker versus Riverview? Like how's that compare to Venice High for schools? What are the amenities in this different communities? They're so different. So some ways it's not as nice that you can't find a value where you used to 6 months ago, and in some ways it's a little nicer where it's a little bit more narrow. You're saying I'm just going to travel with the Kiowa model across town to pick the area that I prefer to live in, and not really have to back that against criteria. So that's the biggest takeaway at the moment. This has been kind of a really common. Everyone that's shopped like Lakewood Ranch or whatever, every single person's gone to South Sarasota and Venice as well, just to kind of see if they liked it better. All the amenities are different amongst all the communities. And then again, if you're willing to go to Parish, which isn't as far as it used to be and as people feel, if you're willing to go to Parish, then you will save a little bit of money there. So with all that being said, let me hop in like one model just so we can take a quick look, and then let's move on and talk a little bit about fees. Okay, so since the Kiowa has been kind of a hot item as of late, I had 2 people go into contract with the Kiowa just this week alone. It's a very generally popular model. The floor plan works great for people. It's just a really good bang for your buck in Sarasota at the moment. We're going to take a look at that one. So we have about, this one's, it's either really upper 400s or low 500 base in most communities, So with a pool lot, you're probably starting at about a 600-ish here, and then you add design or whatever. So this one is 2,900 square feet rather. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, barring any structural stuff. And you saw that 3-car garage in the front here. So I'm just going to kind of give you an idea of Neal. So this kind of deal would be about $75,000 pool with a hot tub. But yeah, just some nice overall space in here. It's a good way to do a really traditional Florida-looking house. And Neal, in my opinion, does a really good job with the elevations. They're very coastal looking, and very, very appealing the way they do the communities. So you can kind of see what's possible here, right? Like obviously this is pretty intricate kind of design center type of stuff, the wrapped vent and the nice kitchen and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really good bang for your buck money-wise, I think, overall. So that's kind of my opinion of it. But again, the Kiowa, the Savannah 2, the Captiva, they're all super popular in that upper collection. But again, if you didn't want to hop over to a Waterside or a Lake Cub or the Isles, and you're in that like 650 under budget, the 4 to 650 works super well at a Neal community. And then again, you can pick any part of town you want and pretty much be apples for apples. So I just wanted to show you real quick, not gonna kill this point to death, but let's hop over now. I'm gonna talk about fees and timelines a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, this is the section where I like to kind of be a catch-all for everything else. So total cost of ownership is going to involve, there's a certain amount of stuff you're going to need to know about, like the lot and the design and the structure and all this kind of stuff. And then you're like, okay, from here, what else does it cost to actually live in here? I like to kind of cover that and then talk about logistics of what does it actually take to purchase this thing? What's the timeline? Like if I can't sign today, when can I sign? So I use this section for that reason. So first we're going to talk about fees, and I'm going to talk heavily about association, and we'll talk about some annual fees as well. So right now, again, this is Grand Palm specific for this video. So Grand Palm right now, the fees, the HOAs are pretty reasonable. Now these vary by like type of home and square footage, how much fee you're going to inherit. But you're looking at about 178 to 300-ish a month, depending on your particular home. So not terrible there, pretty low on average for what you get. And Grand Palm has some, as I mentioned before, unbelievable amenities, like all of that you're going to get just for these fees here. And then CDD, if you're not familiar with, is kind of the development fee related to kind of planned communities. So what that's going to run, that's very much like tax-based annual type of fee. There's opportunities to pay those off early, and certain people choose to do that, but a lot of people just let that inherit in the annual taxes. And the CDD in a lot of places is going to be, so this is usually a pretty firm basis, and that in a lot of communities is going to be about, that 2,000-ish a year. And then this is a little bit of a moving target. And then as far as like other taxes or whatever, so a lot of it's going to be like 1.2% of assessed value, and assessed value might be 85 to 87% of the cost basis, and then you're going to have the homestead benefit if your primary occupancy is here. Then you're going to have a homestead benefit if you're going to be taxed at a lesser assessed value. So, but if you take like this kind of community with a normal size house, and you said I accounted for 5 to 7K annually in all-in taxes and CDD. That would be a relatively safe manner. Now, this all has shades of gray, but I know a lot of people contrasting this from the Northeast or California, etc. That's actually like a welcoming type of price, so the perspective is great there. But that's kind of what you're working at, and I kind of view the CDD and the taxes very holistically for most people, not everybody, but for most people. And then talk about lots, right? So everything that I mentioned about price was a base price of the home at the given time, barring any price increases. Lots right now are going to run about this range in Grand Palm, depending on what you get. So not terrible, again, pretty low entry. So like that's what I was saying, like say you did a Kiowa low 500s on the website, lot, pool, like that's why I said 600, right? Because you're like, say you added 20 plus a $60,000 pool, or 30 plus, you know. So really, when you look at these low bases, you want to at least add the lot, and then structure, and then you're gonna have structural upgrades in addition to that, and then design. So you need to account for that whole package when you're shopping online, so it's not a disappointment, you know, if you have the right expectation. And if I send anyone anything, it always includes that kind of information, you know. So the only thing that can really move greatly beyond that is, you know, kind of like how they would increase based on the current demand, and that with that in respect. So at least mitigates risk in some sort of small window. Okay, and then let's talk logistics of buying right now. So they're all a little bit different, but in Grand Palm specifically, a lot of these communities are on these limited releases and limited amount of sales that all of the salespeople can do collectively. So build timeline, you're looking at a 10 to 12 month from contract signing, including the permit window of 2 to 3 months. And they're doing a couple things basically. So like I just put one, I had one go under contract yesterday, and what they originally had told us was, and this was a smaller home, we got fortunate, but what they originally had told us was like, okay, we're gonna release these in 2 to 4 weeks. So then it's kind of this feeding frenzy that happens right within that window of our salesperson trying to get that one, and us trying to be the best buyer possible for the situation, and there being a priority list, and a lot of the priority lists aren't based on a monetary requirement, so it's easy to get on the priority list. So a lot of it's that, and you got 5 people sitting at a sales center, like used car salesman wise, like is a bad way of putting it, but kind of like positioned in a way where they don't know when it's going to be released. It's released into the system with little warning, and then they all you have to work with each other amongst to kind of get priority there. So it's a little bit of dicey there, you know, and there's a lot of ways to kind of get yourself in a better position there with the right team or whatever. So, but anyway, 10 to 12 month build, and usually a lot of them right now are in 2 to 4 week releases. So you have money in hand today, you're not signing, they're not even letting you guarantee it with any sort of money until the release. So this is, and again, Neal's a large private builder, right? Liquidity wise, they can't float 4 million homes, plus just the time to build them with the crews and that kind of thing. They have to find a way to mitigate this stuff, and they're doing it with price increases, but they're also doing it with this kind of stuff. 2 to 4 week releases, and then a lot of them, what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot in the past, is that a lot of them, they're just like going ahead and saying that we're going to sell these things anyway, so we're just going to start building spec homes. And then instead of releasing a lot, we're going to release the spec in the future. So then it's already like 4 months in of the 10 months, and they're trying to put stuff in that people would like. And if you catch them at the right time, then you might be able to add your design elements, and you just have to inherit their structural. And if they don't get too crazy with it, then it's not a bad option. So it cuts off a little bit of the timeline. And also for these builders, I think a lot might move in that direction in the future, just because for them, if you're going to sell it anyway, right? If they can afford to spec them and then bring people in at the right time, then it's not better for everyone, but it puts everybody in a pretty good position, especially the builder. So that's kind of everything else I would consider there for the most part. I hope that helps a little bit more. I'm probably going to do a video specifically on the current state of new home construction at the moment, because I know how confusing it is to try to win something right now. And I'm like deep in the bowels of new construction as far as like positioning myself and my team to be able to give people an advantage in that respect, because of the volume that we provide. But it's complicated, right? And it's a weird time to say like I have $800,000 and you're still not going to let me buy it. Even though that might still be the best buy in Sarasota at the moment, you have to figure out a way to navigate the system with honey, because there's not great alternatives to that if you burn down the bridges. So that's kind of my synopsis there, right? So I hope that's helpful. Now please stick around just for a minute. In the last section, I'm going to provide some more helpful resources there, and we'll wrap up. All right, so that does it for this video, specifically on Grand Palm by Neal Homes. Stick around real quick. I have a couple things for you. Check out a video I did here specifically on Venice, Florida as a whole. Check out a video I did here specifically on Wellen Park as a whole. Check out my description below. Tons of helpful resources, my contact information, just all the relevant stuff going on in my ecosystem. Thank you again for watching. Please reach out if we can do anything to help you, and look forward to the next one.